Android Sue Time Travels Through. Chapter 1. In 2313, 10 years ago, I started a small company and named it Enviro Repair. I'm Sten, a middle-aged woman just trying to earn a comfortable living without having to work too hard. I employ a group of small androids which are hired out to make repairs to public and private building environmental systems. The temperature control systems, lighting, sound, and digi-windows are always having technical problems, primarily in older buildings where some of the systems were installed long after buildings were built. When repairs can't be made from the main control board, my androids are small enough to move through the narrow conduits between the walls, ceilings, and floors of the buildings to make repairs at the juncture points. There are only 12 androids on my repair crew. Some repair shops employ thousands, but I decided when I started this business to keep it small and simple. I began with 7 females and 3 males who resemble young adult humans, but are only about 2 feet tall. I also have 2 older models for heavier, less technical repair work that don't look human at all. The largest repair company, both back when I started and now, is a chain with repair shops all over the world. The largest shop here in Serapi, the city where I live and work, employs over 250 repair units. The human-like androids in my crew 10 years ago were all GX 444 models, the most advanced of that model type at this time. This particular model is highly specialized and created not only to perform their programming, but to think for themselves when they need to make repair decisions on the job. Because of this ability to think on their own, some say these androids are sentient, but others say it's impossible because despite their sophistication, they are only machines. I've been working closely with the GX series of androids for many years and see how sad they become when a fellow worker is injured or destroyed on the job, which happens occasionally. They certainly seem to form attachments to each other, closer with some, not so close with others, based on their similarity of experience. They spend time together when they're not working, as humans might, talking about anything and everything. 6 years ago, when Trina, one of my best workers, failed to return from a job, her co-worker and friend Anne was despondent for a month. The quality of Anne's work performance went way down, and she spent all her free time alone. I didn't find out what happened to Trina until much later. I heard that sometimes the GX androids could just become dissatisfied and move on to something different without warning, so I thought maybe Trina just moved on without telling me. I treat my androids with respect and kindness. It's not illegal to own an android, but I hire mine among free agent androids and allow them to come and go as they please when not scheduled to work. I also provide them with a room to live in if they want one, which they can furnish as they choose. Most other repair shops own their androids and work them all day except for the minimum few hours the androids need to recharge. I've noticed how androids forced to work this way seem like only machines. Perhaps they are not given a chance to expand their programming with things other than basically slave labor. Androids are made in a factory like any other machine and sold for a profit to anyone wanting to buy them. Some of them get their freedom by asking for it, paying for it, or running away. When an android comes to me for a job, I always ask them how they got their freedom. If they tell me it was legitimate, I don't just take their word for it, I check it out. I can't afford any legal problems, so if a runaway comes to me, I won't turn them in, but I don't hire them either. To my mind, that's another argument in favor of androids being sentient. They can lie. Over the years, I've heard a lot of different stories from the androids about how they get their freedom. The androids who just ask for it are usually owned by a wealthy person who feels sorry for them and can afford to go out and buy another one. The androids who pay for their freedom are usually employed by some small business where they're allowed to earn extra money to pay their employer to buy a replacement android. The runaways usually come from large businesses that work the androids as hard as they can and don't allow them an opportunity to buy their freedom. All androids have to be recharged each day by plugging into a power source for a couple of hours, but the newer model human-like androids have a small invisible photoelectric cell on their abdomen that can absorb power directly from a light source, which is a slower process, but if no plug-in is handy, they can lie down in front of a source for 6 hours or so and get fully recharged. They seem to prefer recharging in private, maybe because for that space of time they are basically turned off or asleep and vulnerable. My office and living quarters are together in the same building. I have the entire northwest corner of the 6th level down in a large building in Serape Valley. Some years ago, I converted one of my rooms into living quarters for some of the androids who work for me by splitting it into 3 levels. Only 3 androids can live there at any one time unless they share, which they sometimes do. Many of the androids I hire are newly free and don't already have a place to stay. Also, there aren't many living quarters built to size for them, so unless they own a place they can convert, they have to rent human-sized living quarters. I employ only up to a dozen androids at a time. Sometimes I have less, but never more. I once had all my android employees living here 3 to a room for a period of about 6 months. I had to spend too much time trying to deal with all the conflicts, and I'll never do that again. One sunny day in spring, about 5 years ago, I was sitting in front of the computer in my small office trying to input some data. I couldn't concentrate on my work and was instead daydreaming about going for a hike in the mountains that afternoon with my camera to take photographs of the spring flowers. Every one of my repair units was already either out on a job or off for the day, and the digital answering service would take information for any new jobs if people called in. It was just about lunchtime, and I'd pretty well made up my mind that I would close up for the afternoon when my communication implant signaled telling me I had an incoming call from Fan, the manager of the Rutherford Hotel. I reluctantly took the call. The Rutherford was the best hotel in town with a highly sophisticated environmental system, and they paid very well for repair services. Fan said in a rushed and harassed voice, "The digi-windows on the first floor have been blinking out for an hour. You're the 3rd repair company I've called. I need someone to come out now to fix this." "You got it," I said. "I'll have my best worker there in 15 minutes. Well, there went my plans for taking the afternoon off. "Fantastic," said Fan, and disconnected. The Rutherford Hotel is the oldest building in the city, over 400 years old, and one of only 5 buildings left in Serape from that era. Long ago, in order to preserve the natural beauty and ecology of the earth that had become so cluttered with people and their constructions, cities began building structures that went down into the ground instead of up above the ground, so that now almost all buildings are entirely underground and the surface of the earth has reverted to a more natural state. There are still some roads, but they're used only for recreational walking or bicycling. Roads are no longer needed for transportation, since anything can be moved instantly to anywhere on Earth from one transporter unit to another, including people. It became law that no building could be more than 3 stories above ground, whether old or newly built. Because they are so rare, any old buildings that are above ground are highly sought after and very expensive. That's why the Rutherford Hotel is the most expensive hotel in town. The people who stay there pay a lot of money. When anything malfunctions, it has to be fixed immediately so the Rutherford can maintain its reputation of excellence. All buildings for the previous 200 years were built with digi-windows, which play any kind of scenery you want. Such as a meadow in springtime, traveling through outer space, or sitting on the ocean floor. You can even tap into the above-ground sensors to look at the real landscape above the building. The top 3 stories and the first story below ground of the Rutherford is the shell of the original building. Many stories have been added below that. The digi-windows on the top 3 floors have the added feature of being turned off so you can look at the real landscape surrounding the building. It would cost me a year's income to spend one night in one of the above-ground rooms at this hotel. I had been hired by the Rutherford once before. That's where I lost Trina. The repair was not complete before she walked off the job, and they never contacted me again for another job. They pay well and on time, so I wanted to do the best job I could for them this time. Dee Dee, one of my newest workers, had the day off, but she had a room here and I knew she was home. I went over and knocked on her door. When she opened it, I said, "I need you to go out to the Pryor building and replace Sue so I can send her to the Rutherford for a rush job." Dee Dee was trying to make extra money to help a friend of hers buy his freedom, and often she would agree to work on her days off if I needed her. "Okay," said Dee Dee, "give me the specs." I had the specifications of the job stored in an info tab. Dee Dee could place the tab in one of her info ports and download all the information about the job, such as the location, a map of the building layout, and details about their current malfunction. "When you get there, give Sue this tab for the Rutherford." I handed Dee Dee another info tab. "All right, Sten. I get paid double for this job, right? For working on my day off?" she asked as she stepped into the transporter. "Yeah, but work fast. I'm not made of money, you know," I shouted after her as she disappeared from the transporter. But I wasn't really worried about paying Dee Dee double time. I would make more than enough money from the Rutherford job to cover the cost.